Hello everyone and welcome to today's workshop. Today we are going to be talking about virtual networks on Azure. I'll start with this. The whole idea of us creating resources in the cloud is so that we are able to communicate with our resources. If you are unable to communicate with our resources, then there is almost no need for us to create it in the first place. So virtual networks allow or enable us to make this sort of connection possible. So virtual networks enable connection between internal or external resources with internal resources in the cloud. To put it simply, virtual networks are simply virtualized instances of the kind of physical networks you have at your on-premises environment. So the same way, your connections at your on-prem environment allows for communication between your resources, that's also the same way virtual networks on the cloud allows communication between cloud resources and even with an extension to on-premises resources too. In a nutshell, virtual networks on Azure is a service that allows communication between Azure resources over the internet, and even resources at on-premises location. On Azure, virtual network supports both public and private endpoints to enable communication between internal or external resources with internal resources. Public endpoints can be accessed anywhere in the world over the internet. They can be used to host virtual machines, enable load balancers, and host web applications, etc. On the other hand, private endpoints exist within a virtual network and have IP addresses that exist within the address space of the virtual network itself. Private endpoints can be used to communicate with resources like virtual machines, app services, database, etc. without having to go over the public internet, like in the case of public endpoints, which adds an extra layer of security than it is with public networks. So the whole point of having a virtual network is for communication, like I said earlier. Communication with your resources. It could be outbound or inbound communication over the internet with resources over the internet. It could also be communication with other Azure resources. This can be done through virtual network peering. It can also be done through subnetting, and service endpoints can also be used for communication between Azure resources. It can also be in the case that you want to communicate with your on-premises resources. Azure Virtual Network also allows you to extend your cloud environment to your on-premises environment to allow communication between these two environments. So there are other cases and advantages of having or deploying a virtual network on Azure, but I wouldn't list them out here because of the time constraints. So I'll just put the link for you to follow up on the caption while we go to our workshop. Let's go to our workshop, guys.
Hello everyone, and welcome to our workshop environment. So we are going to be creating a public IP address and also a private IP address. Now, first of all, you should also have in mind that you can't actually create a resource on Azure without having a resource group, meaning that for you to create a resource on Azure, you have to have a resource group first. So what we are going to do is I'm going to show us how to create a resource group. I won't necessarily create one because I have one already, but I'll just show us how to create one just in case we don't really have an idea of how to create one. So for us to do that, we are going to go to create a resource or the marketplace option. So let's just go to create a resource. All right. So we are simply going to search for the resource we're looking for, which is called resource group. So let's just type that out. Okay, it has appeared here. So we'll just click on this option here to create our resource group. To create. So you must give your resource group a name. That's an identifier for your resource group. Then for the region, you can always change your region to whatever region you want to, publish your resource group in. But I'll just leave it in the default East US. So let's review and create our resource group. We can see that all validation has passed. We've passed all validation check. So we're just going to click on create to create a resource group. That's if you want to create one, but I wouldn't bother clicking because I already have a resource group already. So we'll just leave this here and go back to creating our virtual networks. So like I said before, right, you can always create a resource by clicking on create a resource or by going to marketplace. So let's use marketplace this time around. I'm just going to search for a virtual network. So through this option here, we are going to create a private IP address. That's the resource we are creating right now. So we'll just click on virtual network. So yes, we're going to click on create now. Okay, so if you work in an environment that has multiple resource groups, while creating a resource, it's just going to automatically pick the first resource group alphabetically. So we are going to click here to take our own resource group here, which is FLX Felix. So we're going to give our resource group a name. Like I said, giving a name to whatever resource you create is an identifier for that resource. So let's just call this Felix VN. So you can always choose to deploy your virtual network to whatever region you want to deploy it in, but just leave it in the default East US. So let's go to next. So you can see so many options here for security, but I won't be touching anything here today because we don't have any need for this. Our plan is just to create the virtual network, but subsequently we are going to talk about this at some point in some other workshop. So let's just click on next and continue. So yes, we are here now. If you have an idea of networking, especially about the different classes of IPs and how to subnet networks, and just having a general knowledge about IP addresses and the different classes, you can always tweak it here to whatever network and whatever IP class you want to portion your network in. But I'll just leave it here in the generic 10.0.0.0 with a CIDR of 24, meaning that I'm going to have a total number of 256 IP addresses. You can also always add a subnet if you know how to break your network into logical parts. Subnetting is a very good skill to have in networking, because it helps you know how to manage your networks, and it also improves security. There are lots of benefits for knowing how to subnet, but let's just review and create. So we can see that deployment is in progress, meaning that our virtual network is being created. In fact, it has been created now. So you can click on go to resource to see the resource we have created, right? So we have created a private IP address now. And it's important to note that if you're using an IP address for a resource, it means you want to use that resource around the Azure environment. It means you can't access that resource over the internet. So it's also good in terms of security, right? Because if you're not routing a resource over the internet, it means using the resource is more secure. But let's say we want to create a resource we want to access over the public internet. It means we need to create a public IP for such resource. So guys, that is what we want to do now. We want to create a public IP address. So let's just head over back to home to use create a resource, or marketplace to create a public IP address. So we're in the marketplace now. We're just going to search for public IP, and with this, the option for public IP address should come up for us to choose. So you can see it here now, public IP address. So we're just going to click on this to create our public IP address. So create. So let's just choose our resource group. It's US. So let's give it a name. Let's call this Felix PIP. The PIP here is for public IP. It's just so that I know that that's public IP address. So these are the different forms of security for your network. Distributed denial of service attack. So this is the different forms in which you can protect your whole network itself. It can also be for just the IP, or you can just leave it on disable. So I'm just going to leave it on network, and we'll proceed from here for us to create our public IP address. So next, so tags are just ways in which you use to identify your resources in the environment in which this resource is being used. And especially for things like cost management, when you use tags, you can easily identify, costs to different environments, let's say like department and other criteria you use to, run your tags. So let's just see if we have passed this validation check. Okay, we have, so we're just going to go ahead now to create our public IP address. So guys, this is where I'm going to end this workshop video. In our next video, we're going to create a virtual machine and other resources, maybe a load balancer and some other resources too. Then we're going to attach our private IP address and our public IP address to these resources. I'm going to show us how to access our resources like virtual machines over the internet using the public IP address. I'm also going to show us how to access our virtual machine using private IP addresses through a function on Azure called version. I'm also going to show us how to connect two different networks together on Azure too, still using a function on Azure. The function is called network peering. So guys, I hope this workshop was informative. I plead with you to like, share and comment so that this resource will reach newer audiences who are also looking for resources like this. So cheers guys, till some other time. Thank you.